So here's something interesting. You walk into a car dealership in South Africa. You fall in love with that shiny new Toyota Corolla Cross or something similar. And the salesperson tells you, yes you, that it's only 9,000 Rand per month. Already that starts to sound unaffordable, right? Because if you're a South African who understands the value of your Rand, you start to understand that that amount is way before things like insurance, fuel, and probably maintenance, depending on how you take that car. So by the end of this video, you'll actually start to understand, as we unpack, why 90% of South Africans actually can't afford the cars that they're driving, and how the automotive industry has been keeping this financial illusion, this trap, alive. Truth be told, there's a massive disconnect that's happening in South Africa right now. Car prices are skyrocketing faster than inflation, while salaries, our salaries, your salaries, they remain stagnant. The result of all of this is a financial trap. A trap that's caught millions of South Africans in a cycle of debt that they never saw coming. Or did they? And that new TSI and the likes was just too enticing for them to leave on that showroom floor. Today, I think it's going to be quite important for us to break down exactly how much you actually need to afford different types of cars in South Africa. And spoiler alert, it's actually probably more than what you think. You know what? Actually, before we get to car prices, I need for us to talk about the reality of what South Africans are actually earning. And this is where things start to become a little bit depressing, even before we get to car prices. You see, South Africa has this thing that we all know. It's called unemployment. That rate stands at 31.9% as of 2024. That means that nearly 1 in 3 working age adults don't actually have jobs at all in South Africa. But even those who are employed, the numbers are pretty sobering. For context, South Africa has less than 7.5 million personal income taxpayers out of 65 million people. Let that sink in. The median South African salary, which is actually what most people earn, is around 5,400 Rand per month. Let me repeat that. Half of all employed South Africans earn less than or around 5,400 Rand every single month. That's barely enough to cover basic living expenses, let alone a car payment. Now, defining middle class in South Africa is kind of tricky because different organizations give wildly different numbers with regards to this. For instance, the World Inequality Database says that middle income earners make 4,300 Rand to around 6,000 Rand in SA. Discovery Bank puts this at 8,300 Rand to 29,200 Rand per month. However, studies that were conducted by the University of Cape Town suggest it's at about 22,000 Rand per month. This massive range tells you everything that you need to know about South Africa's inequality crisis. What's considered middle class here would be poverty level in other developed countries. But we're transitional. We're not really third world, but we're not first world. Also consider that car affordability is based off gross salary and not net salary. That's also something that I've always wondered why, because you don't actually have a gross salary, you have a net salary. So actually, with that said, let us know in the comments, would you still be able to afford your car right now if the payments were calculated on your net salary? Let's see if banks are putting you in a tricky situation as it is. Here's actually where most South Africans get it wrong. A lot of us actually focus on the monthly payment and ignore everything else. But owning a car involves way more than just the installment. Let's actually break down the real monthly costs. Firstly, you've got the monthly cost. This is just the beginning because you've got to get insurance. Comprehensive cover can easily cost 1,500 Rand to 3,000 Rand. Then you've got fuel. With petrol prices rising constantly, you're looking at between 2,000 to 4,000 Rand monthly. Then you've got maintenance. Think of things like services, repairs, tires, etc. You've got a budget between 1,000 to 2,000 Rand per month, depending on the type of car that you have. Registration and licensing, these are annual costs that add up if you're not smart. And there's also traffic fines. Financial experts recommend your total vehicle expenses shouldn't exceed 20 to 25% of your gross monthly income. There's that gross thing again. Notice that I said total expenses, not just the payment of the car. So if you're looking at a car that's got a 9,000 Rand monthly payment, your total vehicle cost could easily hit 15,000 Rand per month. Using the 20% rule, you'd actually need to earn around 75,000 Rand every single month to afford such a vehicle. And to do it responsibly, actually. It's starting to make sense now. That's why some of us start to feel a little bit out of pocket every single month when it comes to car payments. But here's where the industry has been kind of playing it dirty, depending on who you are. Balloon payments. And just so that it's clear, I've actually myself once bought a car like this. In fact, I've bought 2 cars. And trust, balloon payments are not great when you get to the end. And I found out the bad way. So what is a balloon payment? Essentially, this is a financial trick that's convinced millions of South Africans that they can afford cars that they absolutely cannot. And here's how it works. Instead of financing the full price over 60 months for the vehicle, the dealership defers a chunk of the money, usually 15 to 20%, but sometimes there's also 30% balloon payments. Ridiculous, I know. And you defer this amount to the very end. This dramatically lowers your monthly payments. So let's say that you're buying a car that's 400,000 Rand on paper. Normally, you'd pay around 8,900 Rand per month over 5 years. But with a 20% balloon payment, your monthly payment drops to around 7,100 Rand. This sounds great initially because you can afford the car. Well, wrong. Here's what they don't tell you. Firstly, you pay more interest. Because you're financing less money up front, more of your early payments actually go to your interest instead of the principal. You end up paying significantly more over the life of the loan. Secondly, that balloon payment doesn't actually disappear. It's actually, you've got to pay it. Because after 60 months of payments, you suddenly owe 80,000 Rand in cash. And most people don't actually have that type of money lying around. So they either refinance the balloon payment, which means more interest, more fees, or they trade in the car, often for less amount than the balloon payment, because you've got to work out the value at the time you're trying to sell it. Then they sell the car, dealing with the depreciation and those losses that are associated. According to the industry data, about 11 to 20% of car deals in South Africa actually include balloon payments. That's hundreds of thousands of people who think that they've paid off their cars only to discover that they still owe massive lump sums, or they just kind of forget that amount. It happens. For instance, one couple that I read about, they bought an Audi in 2007 with 1,800 Rand monthly payments. 5 years later, they discovered that they still owed 81,000 Rand. They'd never actually missed a payment, but the balloon financing had trapped them in something that was going to be tricky for them. Probably some sort of debt that needed to roll over. Okay, so with that said, let's get to the numbers you actually came onto this video for. What do you actually need to earn to afford different cars in South Africa? We're going to start with budget cars. These are cars that start brand new from 200,000 Rand to 225,000 Rand. Cars like the Suzuki Espresso or like a Renault Kwid. These cost around 4,500 Rand to 5,000 Rand per month in payments. Okay, so that's where we're all on the same page here when it comes to these type of cars. On top of that 4.5, you've got to add insurance, fuel, and maintenance, like how we spoke about. You're looking at around 7.5 to 10,000 Rand on those monthly costs, depending on how your profile sits. Now, what that all means is that you need to be earning around 40 to 50,000 Rand per month to comfortably say you can afford this car responsibly. That's an entry-level car. Yes, I'm not even joking. Now, for popular mid-range cars like a Toyota Cross or something of the likes, which is actually one of South Africa's most popular SUVs, by the way, this type of car is going to start at around 415,000 Rand. That's 9,000 Rand per month in total payments alone. Total ownership of this type of vehicle is going to hit around 15,000 Rand per month. For this type of car, you're actually going to need to be earning around 75,000 Rand per month. Is it starting to make sense now? When you look around, the people who are driving cars, do you think that they're actually affording them? Then let's go to the top. Entry-level German luxury vehicles. The cheapest Audi A1 costs around 520,000 Rand. A BMW 1 Series starts at 700,000 Rand. And a Mercedes A-Class starts at around 820,000 Rand. For instance, let's look at that Audi A1. You're going to need 47,000 Rand monthly salary, which means you're going to have to be in the top 10% of earners. For a BMW 1 Series, you're going to need 64,000 Rand monthly, top 5% of earners. For that Merc A-Class, you're going to need 75,000 Rand every single month. You're in the top 3 earners in the country. That's if you want to afford these cars comfortably. For true luxury vehicles, we're talking 100,000 Rand plus per month type salaries for brands like Porsche and the likes, and over 500,000 Rand per month for like a Ferrari. This puts you in the 1% firmly of earners. Yes, I know, a lot of these people don't buy these cars via installments, but I'm just giving you the full picture. To actually even afford the cheapest reliable cars in South Africa, the cheapest reliable new car, you need to earn more than 90% of what the population is earning. This explains why the used car market in South Africa is rather important and it's blowing up, and why so many people are trapped in cycles of buying old, unreliable cars that cost a fortune in repairs. Because we are a car-first nation, because public transport has its issues and we all know about them. In fact, I actually want to know, what car do you guys drive and how much do you pay per month for that car? Also, maybe let us know if it's a used car or not, and even if it's now fully paid or you're still paying it off. Let us know down below in the comments. I think at times though, people make car purchase decisions in a shorter manner, but long term, these decisions, they put a lot of people in a stranglehold on their entire financial setup, and even they damage or at least affect their future prospects. So what should you do if you need a car but can't afford these crazy prices? Well, firstly, you've got to start buying a little bit more strategically. Look at 3 to 4 to 5 year old cars that have taken the biggest part of their depreciation, or at least that hit is now gone, but they still have some warranty left. For instance, a 2022 Suzuki Swift might cost half what a new one costs, but it's still 80% just as reliable. You've then got to also consider certified pre-owned models, because a lot of brands offer certified used cars with extended warranties, which give you reliability without the new car pricing. Also, you've got to think about saving for a bigger deposit, because every 10,000 Rand you put down saves you roughly around 200 Rand per month in installments. If possible, you've got to save 20 to 30% of a down payment or a deposit. In fact, actually for me, when I started buying cars, the need for a 10% minimum deposit was like a strong prerequisite, even though they would still kind of offer you the option of no deposit if your credit rating was high enough. To me, I think that this was the beginning of the end. Then you've also got to choose reliability over status. I know that this is hard for many people to do, but in the long term, it could actually help you out a lot. Think of things like that Suzuki Swift. It might not turn heads, but it'll run all the way up to 300,000 kilometers with minimal maintenance, versus that flashy German used car that might actually spend more time at the mechanic than on the road. Trust me on this one, because yeah, I've done that. I've done the other side of that. Then you've also got to do the tough thing. You've got to avoid balloon payments. Just don't even go there. If you need a balloon payment to afford a car, you probably can't afford that car as much as what you think you can. But I'm willing to listen to alternatives. Chat to us in the comments. Also, maybe, and this is a new thing, you've got to also consider alternative transport, which might in some shape or form end up being cheaper. Then another option that you might look into is leasing of cars. But I don't claim to have enough knowledge around this, because I've never actually tried this type of ownership. So maybe if there's somebody who's watching this video, maybe jump into the comments and let us know how this thing works and how it is versus traditional car ownership that we look into. Maybe let us know if it's worth it or not and what your experience was like. My dear South Africans, this car affordability crisis, I think it's a crisis. It actually reflects a lot of our broader economic and socioeconomic problems in this country. But another thing that makes this even more clear is the fact that a lot of legacy German automakers in South Africa, they're now not doing as well as what they used to. In fact, they're struggling. The reports are everywhere. When you combine the sales of Audi, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, these have dropped 63.5% over the past decade, from 71,000 plus units in 2014 to just 26,000 units in 2023. This isn't just about luxury vehicles. It's about the shrinking of the middle class and people just not having enough money. Meanwhile, Chinese brands are gaining market share by offering better value and better propositions. The Haval Jolion Pro, for example, it offers similar features to something like a Toyota SUV, but they do it at a fraction of the cost. And this is where people are now choosing to go en masse. The numbers prove this. The truth is that for most South Africans, car ownership has become a luxury item that's actually masquerading as a necessity. We've been sold the idea that everyone deserves a car, that everyone needs to have one. which is kind of right. But the math simply doesn't work for majority of the population. So we get to my takeaway. If you're earning less than 50,000 Rand per month, buying a new car is probably a financial mistake. I'm not a financial advisor and this isn't financial advice, but it kind of starts to make sense relative to what we're seeing out there, what the data is telling us. Also, if you're earning less than 15,000 Rand per month, financing a new car is a little bit risky. That's just how I feel. You've also got to consider the 20% rule. It isn't just a suggestion. It's a difference between financial stability and pretty much enslaving yourself with car debt. Don't let smooth talking salespeople and balloon payment schemes actually trick you into thinking that you can afford something that you can't. But I want you to remember that a car is a tool. Even though most of the time, in South Africa at least, we see it as a status symbol. Rather look at the most cost-effective, most reliable ways of getting from A to B. Also consider what your actual needs are and not what your wants are. Your future self will probably thank you for it when you're not trapped in decades of car payments. Truly speaking, in South Africa's current economic climate, that money might be better invested in your personal skills development, maybe save so that you can ultimately invest, and in the short term, think about building an emergency fund, purely because you're not spending that much on your car. But anyways, you don't have to take this advice because it's not even financial by nature. To me, it just feels like common sense based off what I've seen and from conversations that I've had with people in my circles, and also from what I've researched. I just hope that more South Africans, more of you guys, can start to make better short and medium term decisions, as well as long term decisions when it comes to your money. Because truth be told, the type of car that you will want will still be there when you can actually afford it. But what's your take? That's just me. Do you have a crazy car financing story? I think let us know in the comments so that we can all kind of like hold hands and just sigh at some of the decisions that we've all made. Thank you for making it to this part of the video. I hope it was just as interesting for you to watch as it was for us to make. Check out one of these other videos and hopefully they'll be just as interesting as this one. Cheers.